In the previous video, the protagonist ended up getting a cupcake in her face, which resulted in her having a dirty face and her colleagues desperate to help. Jukyung's salvation came from someone she least expected. Suho helped her go to the bathroom alone and in peace to compose herself and get ready. While waiting for Jukyung to get ready, Seo-jun appears to torment Suho's life. The two boys exchange barbs, and Suho asks him to leave him alone and mind his own business. When the protagonist is ready and goes to thank Suho for helping her, she comes across Seo-jun, who reminds her that he wants his helmet back. Upon returning to the classroom, things continue as normal, and Jukyung begins to wonder if Suho helped her by knowing how she looks without makeup. The girl begins to create theories and consults her brother to see if it makes sense. The youngest agrees that it could be that and adds that Suho could use that against her. When she gets home, the protagonist's cell phone starts ringing, and it's Suho. The boy asks her to meet him at the comic book store. Jukyung at the scene tries to invent a story to convince him that she is not the same person from her school. She says that she is going to live in Canada, which is why she no longer studies for now. However, the boy knows who she really is, and let you know. Even after saying that the girl's number is the same as the one she studies at her school, the protagonist continues to say that it's not her but her cousin. Then Suho approaches and lets down her hair, then takes off her glasses and says she's sure that Jubal, as she had presented herself without makeup, is actually Jukyung. Everything is confirmed when the protagonist's mother appears at the store's door and starts shouting her name, calling her to go home. Jukyung runs off, leaving her bracelet behind and Suho guarding it. The boy knew from that day of the bag with the book inside at school who the protagonist was. He just hadn't told her yet, and he didn't get her number from the owner of the comic book store, but rather from a classmate. Suho confirmed that they were the same person the day she went to meet him wearing a helmet and then took it off. As he had called Jukyung and showed up to Jubal, it was easy. The next day, the protagonist tries to maintain control of the situation and meets Suho before class. She actually begs, that the boy not say anything about her appearance, and in return, she will do whatever he wants. Suho ends up accepting and abusing the girl a little, asking for different things inside and outside of school. Meanwhile, Hee-kyung, the protagonist's sister, is in front of the school watching the movement, hoping to see that teacher she was interested in again. Things turn out better than she thought, and she ends up helping the man with his car, then giving her number and saying she can thank her by buying her dinner. Returning to school, Soo-jin comes across Seo-jun charging the protagonist with the helmet, and because she doesn't know the context, she goes to him later and asks him to leave the girl alone. Then, something strange happens to Soo-jin. She receives a message from her father asking her to go home early because they are going to eat with someone else, and the girl becomes restless. She manages to calm down when she talks to her friend, but not about the subject. Jukyung searches at home for the helmet that she should take to school the next day, but runs into a problem. Her brother decides to sell the object on an app. The two end up fighting, and in the end, their mother makes the brothers apologize and cut one of the other's toenails, saying they love each other. After several requests from Suho, Jukyung is surprised in the middle of one. So that the two can be even, he tells her to perform in the school talent show, as this is what the protagonist wants most, and ends up accepting. However, Jukyung ends up drinking a lot of water while in line to introduce herself and ends up letting everyone pass so she can go to the bathroom. When she returns, she goes straight to the stage without realizing that the auditions are over and her performance begins. In the end, it was a meeting with the school board. Several teachers and the principal were present, and the girl left the place very embarrassed. At night, Suho makes one more request to the protagonist. He wants her to pick up a comic from the store and take it to the playground. When the girl leaves the establishment, it starts to rain heavily. She starts running to get there faster and accidentally bumps into a man who was drinking. This boy starts insulting Jukyung about his appearance. No matter how much the girl apologizes, he doesn't stop. As soon as she arrives in Suho, the protagonist lets her feelings out and says that it's not her fault she was born ugly, and she doesn't understand why people don't like her for that. The boy notices that her knee is scraped, so he gives her a coat so that Ju-kyung, who is all wet, can warm up and look for a bandage. While Suho is bandaging the protagonist's wound, Seo-jun watches them from afar. The next day at school, Seo-jun tells Suho that he must be happy even after taking his friend's life and throws the boy's food tray on the floor. Then he goes towards Ju-kyung and sits next to her, saying that he is going to have his meal with the girl. Which awakens anger in Suho, who takes him out of the chair, and the two start to fight, but Suho didn't have the courage to hit Seo-jun, unlike him, who left his face bruised. The director makes them both stop and takes them to his room. We see a bit of Seo-jun's past. The two had a friend named Se-yun who was going through some media exposure, and the spotlight was following him. In the last conversation Seo-jun had with this boy, he said that if he told Suho, he would believe him and everything would be fine. However, in the next scene, we see Seo-jun at his desperate friend's funeral. Returning to the protagonist, everyone starts to think that the fight happened because they both liked the girl, and the three became the topic of the moment. Seo-jun and Suho talk on the court later. Seo-jun tells the boy never to mention their friend's name again, as he is sure that Suho will believe what he says. To cool his head, Suho goes to the comic book store and remembers when he was little and was crying one day, and Ju-kyung made fun of him until he laughed. The next day, Ju-kyung and her friends are setting up a study group, and Soo-jin invites Suho to join them, but the boy denies it. Suho arranged a blind date for the protagonist, and the girl is excited. The two arranged to meet at the cinema and continued exchanging messages. As Suho was next to Ju-kyung on the bus, he kept paying attention to their conversation. Via the protagonist's cell phone. Meanwhile, Seo-jun's mother has been released from the hospital, and she goes straight to Ju-kyung's mother's salon. The two have been friends for a long time. This visit just wasn't very good for the protagonist, who was there without makeup, and so Seo-jun couldn't see her clean face, so she put a clay mask on her face. The boy thinks it's hilarious and takes photos of Ju-kyung. When their mothers are talking, Seo-jun's mother comments that he loves riding his motorcycle, despite having stopped recently at her request, so the protagonist reveals that the boy continues to ride, and very quickly. With that, the woman asks her to keep an eye on her son and let her know every time she sees him on a motorcycle. The next day, while Ju-kyung is on his date, Suho is starting to take his math Olympiads test. However, when the lovebirds enter the cinema, the boy is hidden in the movie theater and watches them. It turns out he dropped his at the beginning and went straight to the scene. At one point, Suho sees the boy hugging the girl and going to give her a kiss. His reaction was the most unexpected of all. He jumps across the benches and separates the lovebirds. However, it turns out that it wasn't Ju-kyung and the guy of your date, but other people. At the end of the meeting, the boy says that he would like to take the protagonist home, but he couldn't, as he has a meeting with his class. However, it was a lie, and the man finds another girl as soon as Ju-kyung leaves. Suho, who saw everything and intimidated him in the bathroom, tells the boy to send messages to Ju-kyung dismissing her and that if he thinks about deceiving her again, it will have consequences. At home, the protagonist discovered through her mother that Seo-jun worked to pay his school fees and even part of the hospital bills. The woman is afraid that he will continue riding his motorcycle, as she lost her husband, the father of Seo-jun, in a traffic accident. Later, Hee-kyung receives a message from that teacher, and the man says that taking her out to eat would take up too much of the woman's time, so he will send her an amount to her account so Hee-kyung can choose something. The next day at school, Ju-kyung catches Seo-jun showing something to his friends and thinks it's that photo of her with a mask on her face, so he takes his motorcycle key from the boy's pocket and runs away. Seo-jun goes after her, and when he catches up with her, Suho arrives to see what is happening. To avoid another fight between the two, the protagonist returns the key and tells them to go their separate ways. Later, Jukyung meets his friends after school to join the study group. When they arrive at the place, they find Suho waiting for them, and the boy decides to participate. Afterwards, the group goes to karaoke and has fun. Seo-jun is also there, but in another room. We find out in the next scene that Hee-kyung works at Suho's father's company, and the one-year anniversary of the boy's friend Se-yeon's death is approaching. As he was an artist, the company is thinking about a way to honor him. Returning to the protagonist, she ends up meeting Seo-jun outside the establishment, and the two come across that group of boys who chased Seo-jun the first time they met. Without knowing what to do, the girl starts running and pulls Seo-jun with her. Upon seeing the scene of the two being chased, Suho starts running after them to help them. However, Jukyung and the boy manage to lose the boys, and in the end, it ends up being left to Suho. He manages to defend himself at first, but then the boys hold him back so the leader can teach him a lesson until the police arrive. Meanwhile, Seo-jun ends up giving the protagonist a ride on his motorcycle, as the guys stole her purse with her wallet and cell phone inside because they couldn't find her. Suho was waiting for her in front of the comic book store, and when he sees the two approaching, he questions why Seo-jun gave Jukyung a ride. However, the conversation is interrupted when Hee-kyung approaches, staggering because he has had a few drinks. The boys help the girl take her sister home, and in the end, Hee-kyung spills everything on Suho's jacket, who is paralyzed by the situation. The next day at school, when Seo-jun notices that Suho is approaching the protagonist, he approaches her first and hands her the key to his motorcycle, then says that he will listen to her from that moment on. The girl didn't quite understand what he meant, and when she goes after the boy, Suho asks her not to go and says he has something to tell her. However, in the end, the boy says nothing about anything. What did you think of these episodes? I hope you enjoyed the summary. Leave your suggestions in the comments and subscribe. If you liked the video, like and share to help me. Until next time.